I love everything about this podcast.
My life feels complete.
It does. I feel like a whole human for the first time.
Welcome to Maker's Hustle, the podcast about turning your passion into a profession. This is episode 2 for Monday, July 18th, 2016. I'm your host, Bill Lavolsi. With me, as always, are Amy Davis-Roth. Hi, Amy.
Hello.
And Jeffrey Moore. How you doing, Jeff?
I'm doing very well, Bill.
We're going to start out this episode by talking about what we're working on. So, Amy, what are you working on this week?
Well, I have been drawing a lot of bacteria. You
Really?
You might say my studio is covered in bacteria. It's disgusting.
That sounds pretty gross.
It's actually really beautiful. I don't know if I mentioned on the last episode, but I got accepted into a cell biology conference that's in December, and for the first time they're having artists at their event, and I am, of course, super excited about this. And so I've been learning all about, the basics of what's happening in the cell science world, and CRISPR technology is one of the main things. I may have spoken about that last week. And so now I've taken on the challenge of trying to put into visual format some of these scientific discoveries that are happening in the cell world. So I'm learning a lot about mitochondria and the latest advancements with supplements and different things that are happening there. And I am getting my bacteria on. I'm drawing all kinds of little tiny things that live inside us and on us and all around us, actually. Bacteria is really fascinating because it is good and bad, and you actually need it to survive. And the basic forms of bacteria, there's really only about 4 different shapes. So I'm doing those different shapes, and they can represent a whole plethora of bacterias, and I am turning them into molds, and then I am turning them into jewelry. So that's what I've been working on a lot this week. And I'm also building a set in the back of my art studio, which really consisted of just cleaning up the back of my art studio, which is something that we'll talk about a little bit later in the episode when we talk about managing your time.
Oh, spoilers. Okay. Jeff,
Spoiler
what about you?
alert. Okay, so before I talk about what I'm working on this week, I want to say, Amy, when you said that you had bacteria all over, for some reason I was hoping that you were like a mad scientist and you were conducting a whole bunch of experiments in your studio, and I wanted to come and visit.
Oh, you'd be surprised, like with the food that I leave laying around in the
Oh, so you're doing
refrigerator.
it. All right,
yeah,
great.
just
Great.
totally by accident. Except when my
Absolutely.
scientist friends.
Well, the
come
best
over.
scientific discoveries at some point were probably some type of accident.
Yeah, I just leave stuff laying around, and then I invite scientists over, and I let them do the discovery.
That's the peer-reviewed part. So this week, I'm working on finalizing the design for my primary robot. What we are going to be doing next week is I have a interview with Intel for America's Greatest Makers, the competition on ABC. I believe it's ABC.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Wow.
Yeah, so I have my casting interview next week. It's a Skype interview. We'll do it with a producer and really just trying to, knead out some of the small details so that I can have something ready to go for when we do that interview. Hopefully it goes well. So that's what I've been working on.
You're bailing on us already.
No,
I know,
it's not.
you're going to get
Listen.
famous and leave us.
Listen, we are all in this together.
Uh-huh.
We are all in this together. Just
Until you
imagine,
get
I'll do a
famous
couple
and then
of
you're
shout outs
for
here and
yourself.
there. No, I have to tell you, I look forward to this. This is the highlight of my week. So I
Aw.
look forward to doing this every week for the rest of my life.
Aw, that is literally the nicest thing anyone has ever said to me.
There you go. There you go. And Bill, how about you?
Well, this week I've been taking a break from writing because I've been doing a lot of writing lately. So I took a break from writing and I've actually been spending some time down in the workshop. Now, my workshop is in my garage. My garage is outside. There is no air conditioning. There's nowhere to put air conditioning. So the first thing that I did was I went and insulated my garage door by just adding some polystyrene foam panels to the inside of the door. And that has already made a huge difference. Today it was 112 outside and 84 inside. So
Oh my goodness.
That
was
is incredible.
yeah, that was pretty
112?
great. Yeah, it's hot, man.
I'm baking in 90 over here.
It gets that hot here in Los Angeles and the San Fernando Valley, but Vegas, where Bill is at, is definitely like
90 degrees. I'm not leaving my house. I'm sitting under the air conditioner. 112.
oh, you
I'm
get
not leaving.
used to it and you have to deal with it. Like I have the same situation in my art studio. It's a converted garage, and that was one of the main problems I had too, was with the garage door, because when the sun hits it, it's metal, and that metal conducts heat, and it just
Oh my goodness.
completely heats up the room.
Well, I'm kind of lucky in that all the other walls back up onto conditioned living space. So they're all insulated. And it's under, I mean, I'm on the second floor here, so I'm directly over my garage right now. So the only wall that I really had to worry about was the door. And as soon as I added insulation to that, the temperature dropped like 20 degrees. It's great. And now I can actually get things done even though it's summer. Before that, I was just kind of thinking, well, all right, fall's not that far away. I'll just wait it out.
Dude, I feel you. I feel that. It happens to me. Last year, I had to take all my painting supplies in the house because my garage or art studio is detached. So I get hit from the sun from all directions at
Oh
one
my
point in the day.
goodness.
So,
Yeah. Insulation's great. People don't, sometimes I think people don't realize, they think insulation, but it's not cold. Insulation is about making the heat stay where it is.
Yeah.
So if I want it to stay out, I just insulate the inside more.
We did a similar thing as in the attic. There's a little attic in my art studio, and we took that spray insulation.
Oh yeah, the blow-in
It
stuff.
it was sort of like the cheapest alternative, which is why we had it done. But they just come in with a big tube, and it just blows it in there. And then over time, it sort of settles. And that helped a little. But
Well,
I think
it's
for the rest of the time that we have this podcast, you and I will be bonding over heat and cold issues.
Yep,
That's
definitely.
okay.
But yeah, that's what I've been working on this week. The other thing that I did was a friend of mine helped me land a really good deal on some new tools. So I got a real professional grade table saw for the first time ever for $100.
Ooh.
Wait, for what?
For $100.
That table saw? I saw pictures of that table saw. That looks like
Yeah.
a nice table saw.
It is.
$100?
Yeah, the thing weighs 300 pounds.
Oh.
Is it haunted? Like, why are they selling it for so cheap?
It belonged to the guy's neighbor who owned like a flooring business, I guess. So it had only ever been used to trim flooring.
Wow.
And then the guy he retired or he sold the business and he didn't need it anymore. So he gave it to his neighbor, and the neighbor said, it's been sitting here for 6 months. I don't use it. It's taken up room. And so I'm happy to give it to somebody who will actually use it and take care of it. Cause you could easily flip it for more than $100.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh,
Right.
I'm actually looking at purchasing some tools because I'm about to get a house. And
Oh, very nice.
Oh my goodness, man. I'm about to spend so much money on tools.
But
I
yeah,
have a
that's what I
question
was.
about your table saw.
Yep.
So if he was using it for flooring, was he using it to like cut ceramics? And if he was using it to cut ceramic tiles, does it have a water attachment, or is that?
Oh
something
no,
that
he
you
was
use
just he was
separate?
using it to cut wooden flooring.
just like
like
wood
if you're
flooring.
if you're laying in a wood floor and then like the last row is too wide, so you have
Yeah,
to
you gotta-
trim it down.
That concludes my questions on table saws for today.
We are
I'll have
getting
more
to the
next
nitty
week.
gritty.
And that's it for table saw talk. All right, see you next week.
I waited all week for that.
Our whole episode's on table saw. That would be great.
Well, actually, this ties into our topic for the week because we just spent way too much time talking about table saws.
We did.
And this week we're talking about time management.
We need a schedule.
We need a stopwatch. Everybody
Yeah.
needs to have a stopwatch.
That's literally
don't have a
on my.
stopwatch.
I have a list. I have a list of 10 things, you guys. I'm taking this episode really, I'm taking this episode really serious.
We'll take that out in post. We're good. This week we are talking about time management. So how do you manage your time when you don't have a boss? No one's looking over your shoulder. No one's telling you what to do and when. So how do you know when it's time to do things? How do you know when it's time to stop? Amy, you sound like you've got this all planned out. Why don't you go first?
Well, I have a lot of really great ideas, and I'm not going to say that I actually take my own advice because it's really difficult, is all I'm going to say. For me personally, it's really difficult to stay on a schedule, but I think that's one of the most important things that you can do when you are trying to start a home business. And there's also so many variables here. Like, are we talking about if you're running a business, or are we talking about doing this as a hobby?
Well, I think it's from your perspective. So, because mine is going to be different because I actually have somebody looking over my shoulder.
Yeah. See,
So
that's
I'm doing my stuff in between. So that's going to be my perspective.
It's
All right, yeah.
incredibly helpful to have someone look over your shoulder. I have a friend who says she's a creative adjacent, and she actually works for people like Scott Sigler, who is a best-selling horror author, and she works for Adam Savage. And what she does is she makes sure that those guys do the best job that they can being creative and getting everything done. And
Okay.
I wish I had someone like her in my life. But one of the things that she does is that she makes sure that everyone is on a schedule. And this is in particularly for Scott Sigler, who she works one-on-one with in the office every day. And so she has a time frame for him where he's allowed to do certain things. And a lot of things that I really enjoy doing, like chatting on Twitter, can be a huge time suck for someone that's creative. And so he is allowed like a very specific time, or maybe it's a couple times in the day, I'm not really clear on that, where he's allowed to be on Twitter. And so I think one of the most important things that you can do is to have a to-do list or a schedule, and you can put this up in your office. You can have it on a chalkboard. You can have it in your notes on your phone. It just break down your day so that you are not spending 3 hours on Twitter freaking out over what's happening in Turkey right now with a coup and the military taking over the president, or what, I don't know what they have in Turkey, but there's all kinds of interesting things happening on the internet today. And I lost a good hour of my day just staring like wide-eyed at it. So I think the schedule is really important. And if you can't write down a schedule, what saves me is Siri. I literally tell Siri everything to remind me to do the next day. I tell Siri when I have a podcast to record. I tell Siri to remind me to get in touch with a certain customer about whatever. And the funnest part about that is that Siri only understands half of what I say. So the next morning, it's like this fun game I get to play where I get to decipher what it is I'm supposed to do. But I usually figure it out pretty quick. So that's probably my number one advice, is to have a to-do list and stick to it. And Siri just woke up when I said her name, and she said, "Okay, I'll remind you."
Oh, goodness.
I don't
Good
know
luck
what
trying
I
to figure
told her.
that one out.
Yeah.
You realize this is how Terminator starts, right?
I love you, Siri. You're my best friend.
Having a to-do list, that is great advice that I never, ever, ever follow, because sometimes I will, the day will be over and I will look back and go, what exactly did I do? And I'll try to sit down and reconstruct it on paper, and I'll realize that I was actually very productive, but it doesn't feel that way.
Yeah.
It feels like I was just running from task to task to task, not getting anything done. And then I look back and go, oh, okay, I actually accomplished quite a bit. But it would be helpful if I could identify that ahead of time and stop having this crisis of, I didn't get anything done.
Yeah, I'm very accomplishment driven, so I understand the anxiety of feeling like you didn't get enough done in the day. And that kind of brings me to my second idea, which is have a routine and then make it a habit. So like whatever it is in your particular project that you do, with me, it's making ceramic jewelry, and it's also drawing for my Patreon. So I have a routine that I do every single day where I get up, and while I'm making coffee, I'm checking my emails so that I can respond to any customers. You know, I go out, I pack orders, any orders from the night before. Like, those are very specific things that I make sure that I do as soon as my eyes are open every day. And then I allow myself a certain amount of time to do different projects. And then I also make sure that certain days of the week I complete like either an illustration for my Patreon, or I have made so many pieces of jewelry so that I can fire the kiln twice a week. Like, there's always these very specific things. And once you do this on a regular basis, it becomes a routine. So now when I wake up in the morning, I don't even think twice about opening up the email, checking it, and doing, you know, the things that are most important, I think, for my business, which is staying in touch with my customers.
Can I ask you how long it took you to get that figured out?
Oh my gosh, years probably. I mean,
Okay.
I've been doing this for like my first business that I owned failed miserably because I had no idea what I was doing. And then the second business I've been doing for about a decade now. And I think that I'm the oldest one on this podcast. So if I come across as like, these are things you should do, it's only out of experience and love that I tell you all this stuff.
Oh, well, we love you too.
But it took me years, and it took my husband, who used to help me out a lot before he ended up with a regular job of his own, to really help me get on track, because I'm really distracted, and I have like, you know, I'm creative, and so I want to constantly be doing something new. So it was really difficult for me at first to continue on with the jewelry project, because it's sort of like being a rock star or a pop star. Like, once people fall in love with something that you do, they just want you to keep doing that same thing over and over again. And it's really difficult for a creative person to want to do the same thing over and over again.
Very true.
And so, I have to make the same design like 1,000 times.
Yeah, I would explode.
Yeah, it was really, really difficult to get into that habit. But once I know that I have to do so many things, and there's so many details that I could go into about the details of the business and how I keep track of inventory and how I know when I need to remake something. But it's all just becomes a habit after a while, and that's how I do it. But yeah, it took years, you guys. So
Okay.
don't be hard on yourself if it's difficult for you at first. And I guess I could jump to one of my my other bits of advice, which is like be prepared to work 7 days a week for the first 3 years, like that you're starting a business.
Yeah.
Because that's the reality of it.
Well, I'm still trying to. I mean, I just went full time. I'm still trying to figure out what my business actually is. You know, like I'm doing content creation, but what does that mean? Like, who am I writing for? I have a bunch of little freelance clients. I write the intro for another maker podcast, and I do that once a week. I help other people with their websites if they need copy written. I write articles for Make. I do my own YouTube videos, and then I have my own website to try to maintain. And now I'm doing this podcast here. But at the same time, I'm at home and I'm not bringing in a ton of money. So I try to help out around the house and I try to, keep the house up. So that way not everything falls on my wife, because that's not fair. So I'm still trying to kind of figure out how all of those things should fit together, and like, how am I going to structure my day? And then how am I going to structure my week? Because, you have your daily schedule, but then you have things that don't have to happen every day, but still have to happen. And where do those fit in? And it's just, I've only been doing this for about 6 months, and it's still kind of adjusting as I go. And it's not easy. It's not easy at all.
It's not easy, yeah.
Well,
That's
if it was
another
easy, everybody would do it. So
yeah, people say that to you all the time. At least I hear it a lot. Oh, you're so lucky. You're so lucky, Amy. You have like the best job. You work at home. It's so great. It's like you can probably just like lay on the floor all day. And you're like, no, it's hard. It's harder than that, because it's up to me. If it fails, if I don't make enough money to pay my share of the bills, then it all falls on my shoulders. There's nobody that I can turn to and be like, hey, can I like get a raise, or like, can I get my paycheck like ahead of time or something? Like
Yep.
None of that happens. It's really, really difficult. And it's really, really difficult to sort of figure out a trajectory and what you should be doing to make your workflow better and more profitable.
And you can't blame anybody either, because you don't have a boss.
I'm going to blame you, Bill, for everything.
well, I think everybody blames Bill. So
It's true.
if it doesn't work out, we'll just blame Bill.
I've made my peace with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's Jeff, you were saying last week that not everybody's built for this. And I think you're right, because for a long time I thought I wasn't built for it, and what I realized was I just hadn't found the thing that I was passionate about yet. Because once you find that thing, it's a lot easier to drive yourself that hard and to work that
Absolutely.
much. Because I am working from the moment that I get up until the moment I go to sleep, which is now I get up earlier and I go to bed later than I did when I had a full-time job. And every moment of that day is taken up with work. And if I'm not working, I'm either doing something for the house, at which point I'm thinking about work, or I'm trying to drum up more work. But there's no downtime. There are no holidays. There's no, I'm going to take a vacation. There's none of that stuff. And I look at some of these guys who I follow on YouTube or Instagram or whatever, and they've been doing this for years and years and years, and they are just now, like, they seem incredibly successful, and they are just now saying, okay, I took my family on a 3-day vacation because we haven't had one in 4 years.
Right.
And this is with everything. So like, we look at athletes, we look at actors, we look at musicians, we look at all these people and think like, wow, these guys just had a hit and they're famous like that, when it doesn't take into account the fact that they've probably been singing since they were 12, probably been acting since they were 12. You know what I'm saying? Probably been playing little league sports, put in the 2-a-days, worked out 5 days a week since they were 12. You know what I'm saying? So
Right.
I think when you think about the level of success that you want to achieve and the amount of work that you want, because to be honest with you, it's easy to work a job. It's easy to work a job. And most people that work a regular 9 to 5, they hate what they do. You know what I'm saying? So really, the happiness factor isn't based on how much you make. It's based on what you do. So if you're doing something that you love, and it makes you happy, you're, like you said last week, Bill, you're not thinking about how much you're making. Like, obviously you want to make enough so that you're comfortable, but you're willing to do a little bit more when the thing that you have to do is something that you really enjoy. So I think that, where you're at right now is probably the most that you're going to learn, right? Everything that you're doing right now, that's going to teach you that's going to be the foundation for everything that you need to do. And in 2-3 years, yeah, you probably won't be taking your wife on any vacations anytime soon. But in 2-3 years, you'll get a 3-day vacation. I guarantee it.
Playing off that, there's a famous quote, and I don't know who said it, but I think about it all the time, and I love it so much. And the quote is, "It takes 10 years to become an overnight success."
I heard that before.
Yeah, I don't know who said that, but I love that so much. And a lot of people, they don't realize how hard you've worked to get where you are. It's very true. A lot of people think that, my little business, and it's not a big business, it's a small business, but it's been going strong for 10 years. But I made a lot of mistakes to get where I am, and I screwed up a lot of things.
And I think you really have to, because the thing about it is, when you do stuff like, when you fail early before something has become monumental, right, you can afford it. It's not that detrimental to your career, right, to your outcomes. But if you, let's say that you are an overnight success and it didn't take you that 10 years, you just did something. Now the expectation is so high for you. I forgot what I was watching. You guys ever heard of the show Silicon Valley? Was it that show? I don't know if it was that show or not, but they were talking about valuing your company. So when you value your company, you know how when people go to Silicon Valley and they go to venture capitalists, they kind of give them this random, well, it's not a random number, it's calculated, but the number, when we hear it, we're like, really? That's the valuation? And people value their company so high, but what it does is it puts so much pressure on your organization to reach that valuation, because the second you don't reach that valuation, your stock plummets. And it's hard to come back from that, because now people start looking at your company as unstable. You're not meeting those benchmarks. So, I mean, I think it's very important that you understand, the level of commitment, the time, the amount of effort, the amount of work, how to value your time, how to value your product, how to value your process. Like you said it, you talked about it earlier, Amy, the process. I think the process is so important, because that's where you start to become more efficient with your time and more efficient with the day-to-day work that you do.
Yeah, and that's going to vary for everyone in terms of process, because there's so many different ways to be a maker. So it's hard for me to really give any specific advice,
Absolutely.
To someone that's a woodworker, or someone that's building robots, or someone that's building spaceships, or someone that's building files or doing coding. I mean, there's so many different ways that you can work. But I think also mentioning the process is a really good thing to remember, that you have to sort of love the process.
Absolutely.
If you're doing a business on your own, I think I mentioned it last week, no matter what you do and no matter how much you love it, and I absolutely love art and I love creation, but there will be days when it will be hard to get out of bed and it will be hard to go to work, even if your work is, out your back door. So you really have to love the process.
Absolutely.
Because on some days you will hate it.
Absolutely. I think for me, and this isn't what we were talking about, but since we're talking about the process, and this is how my mind thinks, I don't stay on one line. If something pops in my head, I got to talk on it or I'll forget it. But when we think about the process, I think it's very important that people think about the process in a way that it doesn't take, as you do it over time, your process should be moved away from you expending the time and the effort to a way that you can get the same amount of efficiency and the same amount of processed product done without you putting in the same amount of time. So if you start doing something, let's say it takes me 6 months to make a robot, and I've made 5 robots. If it still takes me 6 months to develop a robot, then I haven't learned anything in my entire time.
You're talking about optimizing.
Right? That's the word I was looking for. Right? It doesn't, there's no way that as you do something and you get better at it, if you're still doing it the same way and it's taking you the same amount of time, that means you're really not learning. You're just doing. And that's when it starts to become that tedious, and you start to get away from really maximizing the amount of profit you can make.
Well, I think that leads to a couple of interesting things, just in my own experience, because like I said, I'm making as many different kinds of content as I can right now. So I'm writing, I'm doing video, I'm doing audio, but I've been doing writing the longest. So I can turn out an article pretty quick. I can sit down and write a decent article in the span of a couple of hours. It takes me a lot longer than that to do a good quality video, because I haven't been doing it for that long. And it takes very long to sit down and edit a podcast, which is why we record this, 1 week and it doesn't come out until after the weekend, because I'm giving myself a solid block of time to learn how to do that. But that learning from experience is also why some of the other makers that I watch and look up to and talk to can complete a project in an afternoon, and it'll take me, a week and a half to do the same thing, because I haven't been doing this for 20 years.
Absolutely.
But that just comes down to knowing yourself and knowing what you're good at and what you need to improve upon. And there's nothing wrong with knowing that this might take somebody else an afternoon. It's going to take me a week and a half, and I know it's going to take me a week and a half. But if you go into it thinking, well, he did it in an afternoon, so I'm going to do it in an afternoon, you're going to end up disappointed all the time, because it's not a race and you're not competing against anybody else.
Absolutely. No, you're absolutely right. I remember about 3 years ago, with me and my bro, we put together, a small group of friends, and we wanted to start basically doing like a little like mini TV series, and we had a couple of different components to it. So we had like a talk show. We shot a couple of short films, and it was very interesting how the first maybe year we might have put out 5 videos total, like 5-10 minute videos, and they weren't the best quality, but the amount of learning that we did, we learned who was good at what. We learned that number one, I learned how to shoot videos, because I had an editor, but he was the most unreliable guy I've ever met. So I was like, you know what, I got to start editing. So then I found myself staying up super duper late editing videos. Next thing you know, I learned how to edit videos. So now by learning how to edit videos, I'm start thinking like, now there's got to be a way to shoot this video so that I have to do less editing. So then I learned, okay, shoot videos in different parts and already, shoot them in the sequence. That way, when I sit down and upload everything to my computer, I could just pull small things here and there, put it. So by the time I done pulled everything, I got almost the whole video done. So you learn those different things as you go. So now I can shoot a movie, or not a movie, but I can shoot a pretty short series in a month and get it done. Knock out
That's
8
awesome.
episodes fully edited with the team, without a team. But it's that learning curve that you have to put in that time. You have to put in that work.
We actually got a listener question that ties into something that you mentioned earlier, knowing what your time is worth. And we got a question from Mark Schaefermeyer, and Mark asked, should you take jobs that don't pay as much as you value your time? Is some money better than no money? I'm interested in everybody's answer on this, but Amy, why don't you go first?
Well, first of all, hi, Mark, and thank you so much for listening and writing in. We love questions. I have very strong opinions about this topic. I am an artist by trade, and all of the time, people want you to do art for free. People want you to draw tattoos for them. People want you to create logos for them. People want you to do all sorts of things for free. And so I'm very, very much against doing any kind of creative work for free. I think that everyone's time is valuable. No, I think that you should absolutely be paid for anything that you do. There are some caveats to this, of course. I have in the past, and I do this on a regular basis, donate my work to charities, because I feel that it's my responsibility to give back to my community. So I try to do my best to make sure that my work is helping out more than just me. So I will donate to charities, but I will not do work for free. I'll do work for a discount. And I think that figuring out what your time is worth is something that is specific to what particular business or trade that you are doing. For me, I look at it in terms of how much my materials cost me, and then I look at it with how much time is being spent. And I figure that I, at the very minimum, deserve $10 an hour to do something, and then I feel that whatever the cost of my supplies are, it should be times 3, so that then you're making a profit. And that may sound like a lot, but I'm working with very inexpensive materials, so it ends up not being that much. But there are situations where friends, like I am really, 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 really terrible. I cannot charge my friends. I often give stuff away to friends. But if a company or anyone comes at me and asks me for something, unless I know that they're a legitimate, verified nonprofit organization or a respected charity, then I say no. Too many people will take it.
So let me ask you a question. Is this your advice for everybody, or is this your advice for somebody who has a proven track record?
See, that's really difficult, but okay, here's a great example. There is a Twitter feed, which I cannot recommend enough, and it's called _exposure_txt. And a Twitter feed that all they do is tweet all of the ridiculous things people say to artists to try to get them to work for free. And they tell them that it's for exposure, right? Like, we just need you to draw this entire comic book for us. Come on, it'll give you street cred in the comic industry. You know, this happens all the time. And when I was first starting out, I did stuff for free all the time because I didn't realize this. In fact, when I first started Mad Art Lab, which is a blog, which is part of the Skeptic Network, which is all about art and science, we did something that I think is absolutely horrible. We held a contest for our logo.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of hiring a designer, we said, oh, let's have a contest. And, you know, it'll be for exposure, you know, because, like, we'll tell people that you drew the logo. But that's a really terrible thing to do because it sort of diminishes the value of art that's already diminished in our society. Mm-hmm. And I feel the same way about makers or crafters. Mm-hmm. So I really don't think that you should do any work for free. If it's a company that's big enough, or a person or an entity that's big enough to actually give you exposure that they're saying that they're going to give you, then they should absolutely be able to pay you at least something.
Right.
And it's up to you what your time is valued at. I can't say that because I don't know you.
Mm-hmm. Jeff, what do you think?
I think it depends. So I look at this a couple of ways, and mostly because different approaches. So the first one that I think about is everybody is going to get taken advantage of. Even if you say, you know what, my art is worth $20 and somebody lowballs you and says, here's $10, take it or leave it. 9 times out of 10, if you don't have any other money coming in, you'll probably take that 10. So your product is undervalued, and you might think like, oh, well, it's better than nothing, but it's still not what you thought it was. So I think what we value our time and our product is really subjective. So when I think about that, I think about like an internship, right? So you know how Mark Cuban said, like, internships are great because people want opportunities and people need work done. So I think about an internship and how a lot of times it could lead to a job. Sometimes it doesn't, but if nothing else, you gained experience. So when I think about giving away my time for free, it depends on who it is that's asking. That's first thing. Obviously, friends, family, you either give them a discount or you give it for free. That's just how it happens. Or most times, if they're willing to, you know, trade you or give you something else, then you'll do that. The other thing is I look at opportunities for me to network with other people. So if I'm going to do something for somebody and they have a significant network that I can leverage either in this project or another project, then I'm more likely to do something for them. And then the other part of that is a lot of times I do things for you with the understanding that there's going to be something coming down the pipeline. So I just actually designed this product for this guy, and the product may or may not become anything. But if it does become something, then I already told him, listen, man, if this works out, then I want half. You know what I'm saying? But if it doesn't turn into anything, then I get nothing. So, but he already had my time. He already had my ideas. So I think it really depends. I'm not against doing anything for free. I think about the bigger picture and how it could benefit me in the long run. And, you know, obviously my perspective might be a little bit different because I'm not 100% dependent on what it is that I make to, you know, support me. So I'm probably a little bit more lenient because, you know, if you're dependent 100% on making something as your income and you're making something for free, well, that's a minute that you're not making something to get paid. So you know, you can't, I'm not going to say that it's a broad stroke type of thing, but I think thinking about the long-term benefits, the big picture benefits of an opportunity. I remember there's been a few times that I've even paid to do work. You know what I'm saying? I've paid people to do work for them. So, you know how they have the public access networks, the public access channels, you know, those public access channels, you have to pay for a spot. You have to pay for your spot. You either pay for it or you get sponsors. The big shows that have been going on for like 10 years, they get paid sponsors. So they're paying for it, but it's not their money. It's somebody else's money. And they just put like commercials and stuff like that. But we saw that as an opportunity to get some of our shows out there. And when we actually paid, and it was a whole lot of money, but the first couple episodes we paid, and then after that we got sponsors for a couple of other episodes, and then after that we ended up selling the whole series. So, if we didn't have that foresight to think that this is an investment, we wouldn't have thought that. We'd have been like, why the heck would I pay to put my show on something? So I think it really depends on what it is that you're doing, what are the big picture benefits, and then obviously understanding that people are going to try to take advantage of you. And if you're willing to take that risk, take that risk. If you're not, then don't.
If you're paying to put your show on public access, then what you're paying for is the use of their platform.
Absolutely.
But it's still your work.
Absolutely.
Right. So you're not doing work for free. You're paying for advertising, which is a different topic.
But see, the thing about it is here, and this is why it bothered me. So I understand that, but see, this is the thing. So we had the best show on that network. You know what I'm saying? Like we saw the statistics on the network and the shows, and we seen spikes during when our show was on, and I'm like, this is crazy. That's the reason why we stopped paying. So we stopped paying for it because we were like, yo, the only reason people are watching this channel is because of our show. Nobody else watched. They had a boxing show. They had this guy playing the violin. They had all these different shows, and nobody was watching them. So I'm like, we're not.
Nobody was watching the violin.
No, it was
really?
he played the violin, but he also visited other music studios and stuff like that. But nobody watched those shows.
Other violinists?
Yeah, well, I think there was he visited. I didn't even watch the show. I heard of it. I'm just like, this is ridiculous. Like, you guys don't have any views. We're bringing you all. We would go to the Facebook page for the other shows. They'd have like 20 followers, 20 likes and stuff like that. We're on there with 3,000 likes, and this is not making any sense. So we took the show off, and they tried to get us to come back, and then they found us the sponsors. Right, so we were like, we're not coming back until we get some sponsors. Then they actually found some sponsors for us. So that we brought them some stuff, but that's beside the point.
Jeff,
I'm sorry, you took me to a very dark place.
Yeah, you're very passionate about this. So I think what you're telling our listener is that if he has a quality television show, it's okay.
If you have a
first.
quality product and there's an opportunity for you to put your product on a platform, right?
Then do
that, and don't be afraid. Don't think about it in a way that, okay, I'm paying for something. Like, think about it as an investment of your time, of your resources, right? I'm just saying all the opportunities are open. There's no right or wrong way to go about it.
Advertising. You can roll it into an advertising budget. Mm-hmm. If someone is asking you to do something that is going to then put your product in front of eyes of people that you want to see your stuff. So in my case, if I were to put my jewelry in a gift bag for the Emmys, maybe that would be a good idea on my part.
That's
right?
A great
Something
idea.
like that. But if somebody is like, hey, I run this free thought organization out of Kentucky, and I was wondering if you would make some logo necklaces for us so that we could give them out to people at one of the rallies. I'd be like, no, go screw yourself.
Yeah, but that's not even in my mind, that's not even a conversation that we're having, because the rally, what does the rally, big picture thing, what does the rally get you? If there's people that have nothing to do with, if those people aren't in the end going to spend money or anything like that, then that's not even the opportunity. I'm talking about opportunities where you're getting your product out there for people that are going to benefit you in the long run. That's what I was talking about.
So to answer the question in a very concise way to our listener, thank you so much again for the question. Yes and no.
Yes and no. It depends.
Well,
it depends.
I don't know if you two noticed, but I have to
Sorry
answer
about
still.
that, Bill. We're very
I
passionate over it.
Yeah, they forget that I'm here.
Bill, so tell us, what do you
Right.
think?
So I didn't think that I was going to be the hardliner on this issue, but I guess that I am. I have two prices. I have full price and I have free, and that's it. There's no discount ever. Okay, you're either paying full price because you're a client, or you're getting it for free because you're a friend or your family, or giving you this work will benefit me in the long run, which is kind of, Jeff, what you were talking about.
Okay, then take friends and family out of the equation
Okay,
because I think we
taking-
all feel
Yeah, we
that
all
way.
get
Like
that
if
way
my
for
friend
sure.
wants, my friend or family wants something, they can have it.
But
Take them out.
okay, here's an example. All right, I was selling T-shirts with my logo on them on my website, and people would buy them to kind of support me. I also printed up some T-shirts and sent them to popular YouTube makers who then wore them on their channels. I did not charge them for the shirts because they didn't ask for them.
That's advertising.
Right, that's advertising, but it was also work that I did and product that I sent out that I was not compensated
But they
for.
didn't ask you for it.
Right.
Well, that's completely
That's
advertising.
advertising.
That's 100% advertising, though.
Right.
Yeah.
But that would be an occasion where I would think it was okay to do work, produce a product, and send that product out and not be paid for
But
it.
if they asked you
Other than
first,
that-
let's imagine
Right.
if they asked you first.
He'd
$20, just like everybody else.
Oh well, nah. See, I'm giving them a shirt.
I would give him a shirt.
I'm giving them a
No,
shirt.
see, but here's the thing.
Yeah.
If they are important enough that wearing my shirt is going to give me some kind of exposure or advertising, then they're also likely to have $20.
So, but here's the thing, Bill. This is so, and I guess you really can't have this conversation.
You're not going to talk me out of this, Jeff. You're not.
But think about this, and this is something that I learned from this crowdfunding thing that I do. So part of it is influencer marketing. So if you have somebody who is a YouTube star and they have 50,000, heck, 20,000 YouTube subscribers, and if they tweet something, people go to that website. If they, make a suggestion about something, people go and buy things. If one of those people asks, that's an automatic conversion. You know what I'm saying? At least one or two conversions. Like, I'm not thinking about the 20,000 subscribers that they have. If 5 of those 20,000 people that subscribe to them go to your website, one of them is going to like what you have or purchase something from you, which is probably going to be more than that $20 that you asked him or you missed out on. So, I mean, you really can't have this conversation without thinking about advertisement, because the only reason why you would give somebody something for free is because you're thinking about the advertising aspect of it. You're not giving it to them because we're all nice people, but
All right. Well, then let me answer this question without putting advertising into it, which is from the perspective of client work. Because Mark also asked, is some money better than no money? So should you take a job at a reduced rate because you don't have any jobs at the moment at your full rate?
yes.
Now, there are two answers to that, okay? There's one is, if this is the difference between you making rent and not, then do what you got to do,
Yeah.
okay? Don't ever think that you're better than work. If you got to dig ditches to keep the lights on, then go dig your
Absolutely.
ditch, man.
And that's what it sounds like that question was. When you have no other work, that to me makes it sound like that's that situation.
But it's also important to keep in mind that while you are doing that cut rate work, it is preventing you from going out and looking for clients who will pay your actual rate. So if it is not going to otherwise benefit you in some way, if it's not going to help you like keep the lights on in some very material way, or if it is not going to give you that exposure, like real exposure, not a huge multinational company is asking me for stuff. And think of the exposure. I'm not talking about that exposure. I'm talking about something that benefits you and it's your idea. But if it's not going to give you that and you don't really need the money, then, hold out, because you will actually find a lot of the time that if you say, nope, I'm sorry, like, this is how much it's worth. If you've got your hypothetical product that you're selling for $20 and somebody says, I'll give you 10, take it or leave it, and you just say, no, thank you, I'd be surprised.
Well, it depends on how many they order.
And it
Yeah, well, I'd be surprised
depends
if
on
at
what
least
the
a few of them
product
don't come
is.
back.
It also depends on
Yeah.
what the product is, how long it takes
It's a
you to make.
hypothetical.
No, I
You
get what
had a
you're saying.
hypothetical.
Because you asking that question, that's the way that you present the question. It was, if nobody else has work for you and somebody comes to you with a discounted price, should you take it? That's a yes or no. The very next thing that you ask is yes or no, right? So it's not a yes or no answer, because it depends on what the product is, what your process is. You said that while you're doing that project, you could be missing out on an opportunity to market. Well, if you don't market in a way that takes out of that process, then that may not be a thing. Maybe you just get orders and without any marketing, and people just put in orders by visiting your website, and either there's a dry time and sometimes there's a time where you're flourishing. So, I think it really depends. There's no yes or no answer. It depends on what you value your time and how you feel that day.
Yeah, Bill.
Sorry, and it's really just because I've done it all.
Yeah,
You know what I'm
same
saying?
here.
So I know how I felt taking I know how I felt doing something at a discounted rate. I know how I felt doing something at a full price. I know how I felt doing something for free.
That's a really good point, actually, Jeff, about you've done it all. I've done it all too. And I think that's why I get so like hard lined about this topic now, because I have learned like not to do consignment work. Like there's certain things I just don't do anymore because I've been burned by them in the
Yeah.
past. But when you're starting out and you don't have a big client base, maybe you do. Maybe you need to do
Yeah.
some of those jobs.
And also, I think it's very different for you, Amy, because the amount of time it probably takes you to do, a necklace or something like that, it's probably a lot different than it takes for me to design. The guy wanted me to come up with a expandable phone case, whatever. But it took me literally
Yeah.
45 minutes, and now
Oh, really? I thought you were going to say it took you like a
no,
week.
it took me 45 minutes,
Honestly.
but that was because I had the vision. I put it down, designed it.
Because you're a genius.
Well, I try. But, so I'm thinking in my head, this 45 minutes, it may not be anything. It may not lead to anything, but then it could lead to something. And if I make $20 on it, that's $20 in less than an hour, which is almost as much, some people make working a regular 9 to 5. So it depends. There's no right or wrong answer.
So to answer your question, Mark, we can't answer your question.
Sorry.
It's up to you, Mark. Whatever you
Yes.
think is best. If you're just starting out, it might be okay, but don't devalue yourself because you feel inexperienced or
Absolutely
pressured.
not.
Right.
And for the rest of you guys, please keep asking questions, even though we didn't answer it.
Yeah.
Well, we did. We had a whole
Yeah, we did.
discussion
I'm
about
joking,
it.
I'm joking.
And I
We
think
talked
if we want to take a
way-
conclusion from it, what we took is that it is your decision. Don't ever let yourself be pushed into it, because
Yeah.
I think that is the one thing that the three of us can agree
Yeah.
on, is that if you choose to give your time or your work or your product at less than it's worth, it should be a decision that you make with your eyes open.
And you should
for
be
a
happy
reason.
with that
It
decision.
should never
No
be
regrets.
right. You should be comfortable with it. And if you feel uncomfortable
Don't
with
do
it,
it.
don't
And
do
I
it.
think we all agree on that part. If
Yeah.
it goes against who you are as a person, or goes against what you value, your time and your I'm not telling you to undervalue your work. If it makes you undervalue your work, then I say don't do it. Right?
Yeah, there are a lot of people out there who work like booths at craft shows and farmers markets who, sell cutting boards or just whatever. And it is possible to succeed all the way like into bankruptcy. If you undervalue your work enough, you can be so successful that you're actually devaluing your time to a point that you're not making a living
Absolutely.
anymore. If it
Right.
costs you $10 in materials to make this thing and you're selling it for $10, then your time is worth nothing. And it doesn't matter how many of them you sell, you're never going to climb out of the hole.
Oh.
Well, I think we should start wrapping it up for this week. So why don't we
We
move to
didn't
our...
even really finish our topic, though. There were so many
Okay.
things about time management that we didn't even finish.
Well, do you want to talk about it some more? A little bit
I just
more?
want to say some things really fast, really quick advice for time management. First of all, don't let Bill derail your conversation with a really good question from a listener, because that will just take away all the time from your podcast. Another bit of advice I have that sounds really silly, but for all the makers out there, one of the best things that you can do to help be, more productive is clean your workspace, which is something that I was going to talk about when I said I was building a set. I really just cleaned up the back of my photo studio so that I can set up cameras. So one of the best things you can do is just clean up. It sparks creativity and it helps your workflow faster. If you happen to get big, like we all know that Jeff and Bill are both going to get huge, hire an accountant, hire an assistant if you can. I have never been in a position to hire an assistant, but I do have an accountant because I hate numbers. So, have people that can help you make your business better. Learn when to say yes and when to say no, which also plays into what Mark's question was all about. But that will help you immensely as time goes on. Learning when to say yes to something and when to say no is really, really important. And then my final little bit of advice on time management is link all your social media together, but find one that you really love and pay attention to that one. For me, it's Twitter. I'm always live on Twitter. I do link and I do post everything together all in one swoop. But if you ever want to talk to me, Twitter's your best bet. And I'm at surly-amy. So find what you like the most in terms of social media and promote, and always be branding. That's my advice for today.
Alrighty then.
Was that good?
That was
That's
very
good.
good. Way to
Time.
close it out. Finish strong.
Yeah, man. I love you
Nice.
guys.
All right, so let's see. Do we have recommendations for this week for things that we've been watching, listening, consuming?
I will say this: the call for makers for the New York City Makers Fair
It's
will be
out.
closing
Yeah.
in 2 days. Well, the initial
Yeah.
one, I think they probably do another one, but the first one is closing. So if you want a good spot, make sure that you are filling out the application today. Look forward to seeing you guys there if they accept me. I don't know. We'll find out.
Yeah, I don't know. I applied to the Bust Craftacular again, so I'm hoping that they'll let me in too. If you're a crafter like me and you make stuff that you primarily want to sell, you want to apply through Bust Magazine's Craftacular section, and you can get to it through the maker's website as well. So you don't have to apply just as a maker, you can apply as a vendor who makes a lot of stuff, but they are looking for science inspired stuff as usual and tech inspired stuff. But yeah, I had a great time last year. I hope that I can make it there again.
All right. How about you, Bill?
Oh, as far as
Recommend
recommendations,
anything that you want to recommend to the people, the good people.
what do I want to recommend to the people? Don't start out with a podcast topic in mind because it won't last. No, but I mentioned these people last week, but David Welder and Jocko Whatever just finished up their 30 days, 30 videos challenge. They put out a video a day for 30 days, which is, I don't even know how they did it, but they both have a playlist. I'll put links in the show notes. You should go watch all of them. They're fascinating. All right. I think that's it for this week. So I want to thank everyone for joining us. If you are listening to the show on iTunes, please leave us a rating and a review. Let us know what you think, even if it's not good. If you have feedback, want to recommend show topics, ask a question, you can reach us at info@makershustlepodcast.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Makers Hustle. Thanks again, everybody. We'll be back next week. And remember, the hustle never stops. See you next week.
See you next week. Bye.